Welcome to Hive Mind. This is Edge with my co-host Speaker. How are you, Speaker?
I'm good. What's happening?
Doing all right.
Doing
We're
all right?
gonna, yeah, doing pretty good. We're gonna have an interesting discussion today. I want to talk about the dark side of Disney, but I think you wanted to give your thoughts about this love-hate relationship you have with Disney.
I think a lot of people have this love-hate relationship with Disney. I hate mine is more I hate that I love it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I get it.
It's as an artist and as growing up with a lot of artists myself, a lot of great things have come out of Disney, and I want to state this first. Um, and I think a lot of people that have worked in the arts, drawers, animators, people that do voices, have this love for Disney when they haven't looked into Disney, the seedy underbelly of Disney. I think we've all grown up with like incredible stories. I mean, we all love The Lion King. I don't know anyone that doesn't love The Lion King, right? Little Mermaid, great stories. But those stories have been adapted from dark places. And I'm not sure if a lot of people realize that. Sleeping Beauty is a perfect example of a dark story.
Yeah, that's one of the tougher red pills that I have been through because I grew up loving Disney, going to Disneyland. I never, I was just completely innocent in my perception of Disney. And it was one of those tougher red pills to take when I realized how really dark it can go. And I want to go there today. So this topic has generated a lot of interest over recent months and years because it seems like a lot of people have woken up to this. Disney's in the headlines, whether it's, Disney employees being arrested for child porn, Disney stars having mental breakdowns, Disney executives and their seedy connections with pedophilia. So I want to get into all of that. But first, I wanted to start kind of from the beginning with just a brief history on Walt Disney himself and some of those lesser known fun facts about Disney and how he got started, because it kind of gives an idea for people as to his mindset and his influences on the art, on the films, on the theme parks. So going to that, so, many associate Disney with these fond memories they have of childhood, but what they don't really realize is that Disney grew up in a home with a father who was, he was very critical, he was abusive, really, and it was this sort of loveless relationship that they had. They didn't have, much, so Disney used his imagination to escape the harsh reality of his childhood, and he dreamed up a lot of these characters and stories that we see. So, but then when he was 19, he joined the Order of Demolay, which it's a children's organization, but it's sponsored by the Freemasons, and it's for kids from 12 to 21. I think he found this family that he was looking for, that he lacked in childhood from that. And this 33rd degree Mason who ran the order, his name was Frank Land, but all the kids called him Dad. So I think he is the one who actually probably gave Disney some big breaks because of his connections. And it was shortly thereafter that he was, world famous for creating Mickey Mouse. And he was invited to travel the world. He went to the League of Nations. He met with the British royal family, the Pope, Mussolini. I mean, these connections that Disney made early on definitely had an impact on the types of films he created, on the Disneyland theme park. And you can see that, with his private Club 33, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard about by now. But it's definitely paying homage to those Masonic connections that he had in the early years. And I can only imagine the types of things that happened in that private Club 33 back in the day, can't you?
Yeah, it was very seedy back in the day. I think now that a lot of people have caught on to it, I don't think it can be what it originally intended to be.
Right. Yeah. Because that club was not known to many people early on. So I think they did have many years there of a private club, and who knows what kind of seedy things happened now that we kind of know more about the dark side of Disney. I really do wonder what happened in that club back in the day.
Yeah, I think the internet has put a stop on a lot of things. Um, Considering we can search and we can research these things now, and kind of catch them out on it. So I curse and a blessing the internet.
Right. Speaker, I know that a lot of the Disney films have always been more of what they seem on the surface. And we know, like, for example, back in the 40s, Disney was producing propaganda films to garner public support for the war. But I want to go more in depth into the subliminal messaging. Also, I know that you want to just speak a little bit more about your love-hate relationship that you've had with Disney, coming from an artist's perspective, and giving some more information and insight on that.
I just think that most artists that grow up what fell madly in love with it. I know I did. Um, and I mean, one of my dreams was to work at Disney when I was younger. That's like all I ever wanted to do. I wanted to work at Disneyland. I wanted to be an animator there. And that kind of fell through after I learned the dark, seedy side and the corporatism side, because people should know how big Disney is. They're an absolute multi-billion-dollar company with heaps of subsidiaries under their names, more than you could even count, from ABC to Fox. They own them all. So of course, you're going to start getting some seedy things going on there, especially in the film industry, which is a big part of. I mean, Disney owned Miramax, and we all know who was the founder of Miramax, which is Harvey Weinstein. So all those things play a part. But I do want to say that I don't think everyone in Disney, before we get even like further into this, knows what's going on there. I think there's a lot of good people with a lot of good intentions that just want to create art, just that want to create something beautiful without knowing the the seedy side of it. So I just wanted to point that out, because I know a lot of artists and I know a lot of people, and they're not all bad people. So I don't want to throw all those people under the bus.
Oh, sure. There's plenty of people within Disney, I'm sure, that are completely innocent and unaware of what's going on the darker underbelly. But we just want to expose the darker underbelly of Disney, not necessarily implicating every artist, actor, producer, etc. So, all right.
There is a lot, though.
There's a lot.
There is a lot, and I know you're going to get a bit more into that.
Yeah, so did you look into some of the subliminal messages? Because I really want to talk about that. So I'm going to just
Yeah,
give you the floor.
there's so many. I mean, in the Lion King, there's a bit where Simba lies down and the dust kind of comes up. I'm just going to talk about some of the more famous ones here. The dust comes up and it spells out sex. Of course, they rebutted this, saying that it was a tribute to SFX, which is the special effects department. Yeah, maybe. Doesn't seem like it to me, though. There's promotional work for The Lion King, if you've ever seen it, and it's got a line on the cover, but on Simba's nose, you can. It's like it's a woman showing her ass, and so it's once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's one of those things. There's a lot of phalluses in Disney movies hidden, from The Little Mermaid. There's a tower there. They actually had to change some cover art on The Little Mermaid because of that. There's also a bit at the end with the priest who is reading out a passage he's a bishop, I think, but he's reading out a passage while they're getting married at the end, and he has a heart on. Of course, they rebutted this with that it's his knee, but they took it out. There's a lot going on with Mickey Mouse as well. There's a few famous pictures of him holding Minnie Mouse, but which once again it looks like he's holding a phallus. These things are scattered through Disney movies. Hercules, there's another one with the centaur when he gets hit on the head. Once again, looks like a phallus. So there's the Rescuers was another famous one where
It's one of the more obvious ones that you really just can't deny, right?
The Rescuers, yeah, 100%. I don't know if that was just blatantly obvious though. If you slow down the animation, because it's just a naked lady in the window. It's so obvious. It's not even animation. It's actually a picture of a real naked woman. So that's definitely one of the standout ones.
Right. And then one that I've seen just circulating forever is when you flip it upside down, like the mirror image of it spells wicked. And I've seen that on like a Disney mug before. Have you seen that image going around?
Yeah, that's a bit of a famous image.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot going on in the subliminal messaging, wouldn't you say?
100%.
Any other examples that you've seen going around?
Those are really generally the most famous ones. There's one in Aladdin which seems like a voiceover. That one's a little bit debatable as well. Some of them are debatable, but the symbolism, even in the writing, in the words, in the things that are spelled out, there's a lot. I mean, we'll show you some on the screen as we're talking about this, obviously.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's that one that was just brought to our attention through Q, of Pinocchio. It's actually an Anon had posted this about Pinocchio. And I didn't even realize this, but you really have to look back at some of the stories and the way that they're written. I mean, and it's not even really subliminal. It's just right there in front of your face. That Pinocchio story where the fat coachman says, I pay even for small boys. He brought the boys to Pleasure Island and said, no boys ever return, at least not as boys. So that's not even really subliminal. It's just
It's
right in
not
your
hidden.
face.
It's not but like I said, a lot of these stories have been adapted from dark tales. And what I was saying before, previously on Sleeping Beauties are really dark tale, as in when Prince Charming goes and kisses her to wake her up, it doesn't generally wake her up at first, and he actually rapes her, and she falls pregnant to him, and this is while she's all unconscious. That's the actual original story.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's the
Wow.
original story. Right? So there is some. I mean, the Little Mermaid tale's pretty graphic. Once the wording of it is very graphic. I mean, when Ursula turns her flipper into legs, it's described as every time she walks, it feels like she's walking on glass. So all these stories have generally been. Hansel and Gretel is another classic example. And it's a witch that eats children.
Right. All of these old folklore stories, a lot of which were adapted into Disney movies, are very dark, and probably do have a lot of like occult imagery and stories within them, hidden within them, or really not even hidden, but just in plain sight. And innocent people just kind of skim over it, not realizing what they're right there telling you. It's crazy. I mean, and it seems that, Disney has been this magnet for pedophilia. You can look back at just the recent years of everyone from low-level employees to high-level executives that have been busted for pedophilia and child porn. I mean, just last month, a couple of Disney World employees were busted in a child porn sting. But every few months we hear stories like this, and you could look back over the past year. In fact, I did when I was researching for this, And there's like countless cases. December 2019, a Disney cruise employee was arrested for raping a 13-year-old. Same month, a Disney World employee was arrested for this child predator sting. He arrived at the sting buck naked, carrying his Disney uniform. November 2019, 2 Disney employees arrested for child porn. October 2019, a Disney Cruise Line employee arrested for molesting a 10-year-old. May 2019, a Disney employee was arrested for trying to lure an 8-year-old to a hotel. And these are just the employees, but there's this culture and acceptance and like a history of cover-ups from the higher ups that have created this and pushed this, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's the worst seedy bit about it, is that it's the cover-ups from the high ups, which signify, like, signals to me that they are also involved in some way, in some deeper way, because we know these sort of industries, especially industries that cater towards children, such as teachers, and Disneyland is a perfect example of it, attract pedophiles because it gives them access to children.
Exactly. And for that, you have to understand that in every industry that's related to or marketed towards children, there's going to be pedophiles that are attracted to that because of that's where they were going to be predators. But knowing that, you have to be extra vigilant. So would you say that Disney is vigilant about pursuing this, or does it seem more like they're covering it up?
They're definitely covering up. I mean, how many executives have we known from Disney to be pedophiles? How
Tons.
many? Tons. Go. Lay it
Victor,
on me.
okay, Victor Salva, he's a Disney director convicted of molestation. Michael Laney, former VP of Disney Company, he got 81 months for sexual abuse of a 7-year-old. John Healy, Disney executive, he was arrested for felony child sex abuse charges of 2 girls. Then just recently, we had Epstein documents unsealed. And Virginia Roberts Jeffrey named George Mitchell, who was a Democrat senator of Maine and was chairman of Walt Disney Company. And he was named one of her rapists. So then you have, of course, directors in Hollywood, some of whom have done Disney films or part of films that are part of the Disney franchise, like Bryan Singer, who has been accused on multiple occasions of child sex abuse from boy actors and participating in a sex ring. And from those same allegations, another Disney TV president, David Newman, has been accused as well of participating in that same sex ring. So
You have the Pixar co-founder that has been caught up in a sexual harassment scandal, John Lasseter. This is the co-founder of Pixar. And then from there, you've got a lot of managers. Managers are always getting called out for sexual abuse. I mean, the most recent case on that was a former Disney child star, Ricky Garcia, who said his manager was raping him at 13. And in the lawsuit that they filed as sexual abuse, they've listed 4 entertainment companies and 4 other individuals which are not listed. But we'll see how far that goes. I'll keep an eye on that as well. But it's everywhere.
it is. And it's really sad when you hear some of their testimonies. I mean, I really wanted to get into some of these child actors who have come forward. You know, one that comes to mind that was a Disney star is Bella Thorne, and she talked openly about her abuse going back as early as 6 years old.
I mean, if you read the book, you'll be like, transitioning from Disney to this was fucking easy. I don't know. Getting molested from your 6 to your 14 seems like way harder circumstances, or being physically abused all the time seems like a much more difficult situation than fucking have paparazzi following you since you were 12. I don't know. I was still being molested when paparazzi were still fucking following me. So it's pretty hard in my mind to think about these big flashlight photographs and everyone thinking they know me and talking about me, but having no idea the type of mistreatment that I was still dealing with at that time, that everyone around me saw and did nothing. So I don't know. You tell me what's so hard. Because that to me, way harder than any other of this other shit that I do on a daily basis.
And, these are just a few examples, but I was reading this quote from Elijah Wood that kind of talked about Hollywood. He wasn't specifically talking about Disney culture. He was talking about Hollywood culture, but a lot of this is connected to Disney and what they've been doing over there too. So I just wanted to kind of read that because it really points out a lot of why we don't hear more people coming forward. So he was referring to the Jimmy Savile child
We,
sex abuse scandal.
we got called out for saying that wrong the other day, so we got to get it right.
Right. So Jimmy Savile, he was talking about that child sex abuse scandal, but then he was relating it to Hollywood, and he said, clearly something major was going on in Hollywood. It was all organized. There are a lot of vipers in this industry, people who are only out for their own interests in mind. There's a darkness in the underbelly. What burns me about these situations is that the victims can't speak as loudly as the people in power. That's the tragedy of attempting to reveal what is happening to innocent people. Their lives have been irreparably damaged. And so, coming from someone inside Hollywood, he knows what's going on to some degree. But I think this is a lot of the reason why we don't see more of these child actors coming forward, don't you?
I also think a lot of it is settled under the table for reasons as in people don't want that stigma on them. We do know a lot of victims are afraid to come out, and we do know that a lot of these, especially child victims, are taught in their abuse to feel like they are the ones that have done something wrong, and they carry that with them.
Right. And we've seen a lot of these Disney actors who have grown up in front of the camera and watched with curiosity as some of them have kind of lost their minds and speculated.
Most of them have lost their minds.
Yeah, and speculated about that. And I want to get into, the darkest part of Disney, which is the mind control operations like MK Ultra and Monarch, and how Disney is connected to that. We've heard stories from survivors of Disney that Disney cartoons were used, in their programming, and even Disney parks after hours have been. There's been allegations of the parks being used in programming, and
yeah, MK Ultra is a big part of Disney and connected with the intelligence community, and we know Disney has connections with the intelligence community.
Disney himself had connections with the intelligence community. It's rumored that even the CIA or the predecessor of the CIA helped Disney to build Disney World, like helped him to secure the land, the property, and secure approval with the locals and the local government there to build Disney World. So it's curious to me as to why they were interested in that, unless they had ulterior motives. Yeah, definitely a long history goes back with Disney themselves being involved with the intelligence community. And we have lots, it's hard to prove the Disney connection to mind control, but we do have lots of victim testimony that does seem to be pretty consistent from one person to the next of Disney films being used in their programming. Because a lot of these stories, like you were mentioning, are dark, because of them being so fantastical, like, for example, Alice in Wonderland, it tends to help children who are undergoing these mind control programming operations to dissociate, does it not?
Yeah, it helps them to detach from reality. We kind of have to go back to what MK Ultra is, because MK Ultra is not a conspiracy. There's plenty of documents on it. It's not something that people can say you put on the tinfoil hat on. No, this is actual programs that were carried out in the 40s, 50s, and even today, possibly. It just must be a lot harder now to get it done. But this all originated from Operation Paperclip. We can do a whole video on Operation Paperclip as well, which probably we will in time. But MK Ultra is a method of manipulating mental states and altering brain functions. It's pretty much a hypnotizing mechanism. And the way that they administer this is by drugs, chemicals, sensory deprivation, verbal sexual abuse, and that leads to torture and trauma within the victim. And it creates this form of mind control. And sensory deprivation, isolation, and imagery is what you kind of would put Disney, their main focus on, their triggers hidden within Disney movies.
Right, because with the programming, it creates and compartmentalizes and kind of fractures the mind to and creates certain personalities within that individual at very young ages. They like to get them when they're very young because it's much easier to get them to dissociate. And they program them for different purposes, right? I mean, they could program someone to be a sexual symbol or a sex slave even, or they could program them to be a spy. And what the benefit to these sadistic people who have been doing this kind of mind control programming is that these individuals, these victims, because their mind is so compartmentalized into these different personalities, they don't even remember. Their front personality doesn't remember all of those horrid things that happened to them, the abuse and the programming, until it starts to break down. And that happens quite often, we see, as these kids get older into adulthood, doesn't it?
I think Britney Spears is probably the most classical case of that. I mean, Britney Spears was in the Mickey Mouse Club. She was associated with Disney for a long time before she started her big career, which started off, well, it didn't start off in music, but that's what really elevated her to the next level. And even her first songs were very sexualized. And we kind of knew that's the sort of artist she was going to become.
Right. And it does seem like she has undergone mind control programming and has has multiple personalities, dissociative identity disorder. And
I mean, yeah, I think we should show that clip of her in here.
okay,
Just so you can get an idea of it. So we'll roll that.
You've had a rough year. You've had a year that would test a lot of people. Illness in the family. A breakup. This spasm of publicity about what happened from Mexico to London.
It was pretty rough, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Ah, weird. Hello. Oh my goodness. Hello. Ew. Strong Brittany. Yeah, it was a weird time. Ew. I'm embarrassed. Can we stop?
so you can see that she tends to change from one personality, the front personality, into a very childlike personality there, can't you?
It's a very defensive mechanism. Well, that's really what a dissociative identity disorder is. And a lot of child abuse victims, sexual abuse victims, will tell of how they kind of leave their body during certain abusive stages. They would kind of shut down, and a lot of them would describe it as looking from a third person in. So they don't really because they can't handle the feelings, the emotions, the trauma behind it. So they kind of separate themselves from their body, and it becomes, it becomes pretty much a a different identity altogether, one that is easier or stronger at handling those emotions.
Right. And then we saw what happened to Brittany later on when she had a full-on meltdown, you know, the shaving the head, the baseball bat, all of that. And she's not the only one that's had these kind of meltdowns. We've seen them, you know, time and time again from these child stars, have we not?
Lindsay Lohan's another classic case. She's had plenty of breakdowns. She's also spoken about abuse.
Right. And then I've heard with mind control programming in particular that they use different languages in the programming. So Russian, you know, or even Arabic and these different languages, and also use different accents as well. And sometimes with these people who have been through programming or have DID, their personalities will have different languages and or accents. And I've seen a clip of Brittany and of Lindsay where their accents change. It's really weird, but it makes me think.
It's very strange.
Yeah, it makes me think that this is definitely revealing some of their past with programming, and that starting to kind of break down.
And there's a lot of cases, like I'm sure you can just Google compilations of stars and even TV personalities that have this sort of short circuit. I mean, sometimes I've drifted off into space before, but this is very different. The whole, it's really hard to explain, but when you watch it, it does seem like some sort of a malfunction. It doesn't seem like they're just drifting off into space or daydreaming like most of us do sometimes. I mean, I used to do that all the time, but I didn't have like this fight within my own consciousness, which is like a mechanical disruption.
Yeah.
It's very strange watching it.
It is very strange. I've watched some testimony by Paul Bonacci, who had a court testimony that he had to give in a lawsuit related to he was a mind control victim, a monarch mind control victim, and he had to provide testimony. And in that testimony, he was kind of very descriptive about the programming and how he was taught to see his mind as a computer, and that they do give him certain abilities that seem superhuman, like photographic memory, where he could recall documents or conversations word for word. And that was used, I believe, in the mind control programming in order for surveillance, to be able to spy and record conversations or record documents that you would see.
Does this have to do with Monarch?
Yes.
If I use the code, will that help? Which I just obtained in the last hour. D6413782, program XPY Eagle Alex Hope. Please go ahead and answer all questions.
I was created by a government program,
Which government program?
Monarch.
And what is Monarch?
Monarch is an operation that was created by the United States government to create spies for other countries. They use children for the purpose that they're easily integrated into multiple personalities because they can dissociate. Monarch is a program that is run by Michael Angelo Aquino, who was an Army Reserve colonel at Presidio. He is also the leader of the Temple of Set. He also runs a child daycare center. He also is involved in human sacrifice.
Do you have any knowledge about whether the Monarch operation involves a United States sponsorship, or whether it's just simply coincidental that many of the members of Monarch happen to be working for the government.
I am not aware of Monarch's true producer. In words, I know that all of its leaders are politically inclined and are current and or members of Congress, the Senate, or in high places in Washington.
Are these individuals affiliated with NAMBLA?
A few.
You were looking out into space and your eyes were darting around. Can you describe for me what thought process you were just going through?
I have a process in my head that attempts to connect each memory with the person or group that they were involved with. What that means is I had to go through and look at Monarch and to see which individuals that Monarch was involved with and to see if NAMBLA came up on the list.
Do you conceptualize your thought process as similar or analogous to that of a computer?
Yes.
So it was very interesting in the way that he related his mind as a computer and recalling that and then seeing these people that seem to have like computer glitches. It makes sense to me. It's just like a breakdown in the programming.
Yeah. It's kind of like going back to what I believe Disney's main purpose for doing this to their child stars is. And I think, this is just me on a personal level, I think the majority of their programming that has been put in is to sexualize children. That's what I think is the main goal of these programs, especially for Disney stars. I mean, let's take the most perfect example of Hannah Montana.
Right.
Miley Cyrus. She's a classical case when you can look at this. When you have young stars, like how many of them do you know that have grown up to just be wholesome people? Do you know what I mean? Like just have families or kids and go on to do other movie roles, or a lot of them just go down this really dark sexualized path. Hannah Montana, perfect example. And you had millions of kids that look up to her. I think there's 4 or 5 that still watch those series today. There's still reruns of it going on. They look up to this character, they idolize them, and then when they take a switch, the kids kind of come along for the ride. It's kind of like a Pied Piper situation. Miley Cyrus is one of the most sexualized persons going around. I mean, you can just to an extent that which is actually it's nauseating, right? And I don't mind a sexualized female. I'll be honest with you, right? but when it comes to these sort of things, and when it comes to kids, and especially kids that idolize certain individuals, I have to put my foot down. I don't like it.
Right. I think that with Miley Cyrus, especially after that, what was it, VMA, where she did that one performance and she was wearing, it was like a bikini and it was just very sexualized, the whole thing. And that was really that tipping point where it was so over the top sexualized that people started wondering what was wrong with her. They were having public conversations about, has she lost her mind? And that's when people really started getting cued in. But going back to the mind control programming, there are, from what we understand, several different forms of the programming. And one of them is the kiddie programming. And that is to become either a sex slave and or like a sexual icon. I would think with these Hollywood actresses that may have gone under mind control programming, that's what the programming that they have is this kiddie programming to become these sexual icons. And it is to basically steer, because what they always say is, we look to the stars. We as the public take cues from Hollywood as to what society should be. So like they're cutting edge, they lead the way. So this whole idea of sexualizing children and being so overtly sexual, that whole thing is really to steer the population in a certain direction, is it not?
You can see it. You can see it in this new progressive sort of movement where sexualized kids are not, kind of like given a smack on the back of the head. And I'm like, what are you doing? Don't wear that dress. Don't wear those shorts. Like what you expect common parents to do, or parents actually care about their kids. Now it's applauded. And we see that from the regressive left. And it's really sad, that sexualization of children, and you can see that with the transgender agenda.
Right. I know people have wondered about, Katy Perry, Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato, Ariana Grande,
yeah.
Justin Bieber. I mean, all these kids grew up in Disney in some way, shape, or form. And you can see it kind of playing out with the way that they've gone into adulthood and either the mental problems that they've had or the overtly sexual imagery or Illuminati sort of imagery that they carry out throughout their careers. So, yeah, it's definitely leaves one speculating what kind of, if they had mind control programming associated, with their childhood growing up in Disney and in Hollywood.
It's like, I know we all grow up. I know we all change in certain ways, but there's this huge gap between them where it doesn't seem like they've gone through this normal change. And of course, in Hollywood, you won't get that normal kind of childhood or experiences, but it's like they go from point A to point B really quick, really fast, and just in a more overt way than any normal person does.
Yeah, it definitely does like seem not A to B, but like A to Z,
Yeah.
And then you just lose it. And it's so funny because, well, it's not funny, but it's consistently every time that they have these public meltdowns, they're just rushed to a psychiatric ward like they're getting reprogrammed. It's really sad.
It is sad. you got to empathize with a lot of them, because a lot of them simply are tools, and they have been used as tools either to make money or to sexualize the population and to push agendas.
Yeah, it does seem that way. And, whether these child stars are victims of abuse, it's clear that, growing up in this predatory industry with Disney, with Hollywood culture, is very damaging to these kids, right?
Definitely is. Macaulay Culkin's another one.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the earlier ones, more famous ones. He kind of went off the rails there for a while. I have seen some podcasts of him recently, and he does seem like he's kind of got his stuff back together. But it took him a lot of time staying out of the limelight as well. He had to disappear.
Right, because these child stars, they grow up with handlers. And they seem to always have them, even going into adulthood. I don't think that they're ever really free until they completely just get out of Hollywood.
I think that's the only way to kind of get out of it, but most of them never do. Most of them are still tethered in some way to that industry.
Yeah, it's really hard to get out. So there's this culture of pedophilia within Disney that they don't want to admit, isn't there?
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, I think you can consider it systemic. Just with the cases that we've been seeing, from employees to managers to, elites, it does have a really dark, seedy underbelly, Disney. And I think the thing that keeps people not looking at it is this cognitive dissonance. I love Disney so much, it can't be this way. Or I love this company and what they've done, and I've grown up with it, that I don't see the dark side of it. See, I can see both. There's no cognitive dissonance with me. There's some things I love about Disney, and there's some things I absolutely loathe about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of the public is still asleep to this, and Disney would much rather have it that way. They'd much rather, cover it up, let people live in this fantasy rather than accept the reality of this dark side of Disney.
Mm-hmm.
But, you can't really change the culture without first recognizing it. And the problem is that, you have to go through that process of really getting to the bottom of it, to the dark underbelly, and realizing it, seeing it for what it truly is in order to change it. I mean, we certainly don't want the subliminal messaging, do we?
Yeah, but we see this everywhere.
We do. Well, we do. I don't know that everybody. There's still a lot of people asleep to all this, isn't there?
Yep, and hopefully more people will wake up to it. We hope.
Well,
that's why we do what we do.
That's what I was just going to say. You beat me. Yeah, Disney. It's a heartbreaker because, you have all these fond childhood memories and then they're all just ruined when you learn all of this stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. I still love some Disney movies, though.
I know you do.
You don't love Disney movies? You're lying if you say you don't.
I love some Disney franchises. I cannot lie. I'm like a huge Star Wars fan. I hate what Disney did to Star Wars, but I'm a huge Star Wars fan. The same thing with Marvel. I love Marvel movies, and it sucks to have to realize, the kind of industry it is. And I don't really, I'm torn because I do love to escape into those sci-fi fantasy kind of adventures, but it's a tough red pill to know what's really going on at Disney and in Hollywood in general.
And it's better to be aware of it than not to be aware of it. In my opinion, I think it makes it easier to see other things in the world as well, from the mainstream media to other certain companies to other certain things. You can kind of see the long-term plan of it, and you can see the underbelly of it. I mean, mainstream media is a perfect example. I know CNN, MSNBC, and even Fox. I know they're all full of shit, right? But there is some things on there which is good. That's what I'm saying. You gotta pick out. You got to pick your battles in those things, and you got to pick out truth from lies, and you got to pick out truth from agenda.
Critical thinking. That's what we need. Critical thinking and seeing things as they are, and teaching others, especially our kids, to spot these things too. So
Definitely.
I think this is a good place to leave it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we've covered what we wanted to cover and speak a little bit about the seedy underbelly of Disney. Yeah,
we could go on for days with this topic, I bet.
I think we can sit here and talk for hours just about MK Ultra and about all those things, but we will save these for another video for you.
Yeah, good idea. We should do a whole topic on MK Ultra and Monarch for sure.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for joining us here today on Hive Mind with the Speaker and Edge. Please be sure to share, like, subscribe, and hit that bell. We'll see you back next time, right here on Hive Mind.